See, I love what Cam said, actually. Like, it's words all week, but all that matters is the two teams who show up on Sunday. Let's start with Carolina. What do you need to see from the Panthers besides a win to buy them as actual contenders?
Well, Carolina's a good football team. They've already qualified for the playoffs, and they have one of the true superstars in the National Football League in Cam Newton. So collectively, they know how to win games a variety of ways. And when you have that going into the playoffs, they also have playoff experience. Now, they weren't in the playoffs last year, but they have had playoff success as an organization. So there's a comfort level for them. They know the type of football they have to play. They also have an identity. They know what they know they have to be a physical team. They know they have to put the ball in their quarterback's hands to be able to run the ball and throw the ball, not like the rest of the quarterbacks that are going to be in the playoffs. And it's like basketball. Cam Newton on any given day could be the best player on the field. So his team's going to have a chance, especially with the great defense that they have. So Cam is not under as much pressure as some of the other quarterbacks because he can rely on his legs. He doesn't have to be as accurate as some of the other guys. Their passing game has been inconsistent, but they've been able to win. And that creates a lot of confidence throughout the roster. Like if some of the teams, if they can't throw the ball, if New England can't throw the ball, they're not going to be able to advance in the playoffs. Pittsburgh, if they can't throw the ball, they're not going to be able to advance. But Carolina's one of the teams that they don't have to be able to throw the ball well because of the way their offense is run and the way their defense has been consistent.
So the Cam doesn't have to throw the ball well for them to win. It's very hard for them to win if he is not throwing it well and then also not getting it done with his legs. Earlier in the year, when they've won 7 of their last 8. So prior to that stretch, the big difference wasn't Cam was a lot worse than he's been, or the big difference was Cam wasn't running the ball as much. They were being more cautious with him coming off the injury.
Yes.
Now that Cam has become their feature back, essentially, similar to what he was in 2015 when they were 15-1, they are able to get away with some of the more inconsistent throwing performances. And I'm sure you have an updated fancy graphic to show me Cam's inconsistencies. I will say this about the Panthers as a whole. One thing that I really like for them in the postseason is not only are they rushing the ball better the last 8 weeks, averaging 175 yards per game running the last 8 weeks of the season, they are one of the only teams in the league that I know can get to the quarterback with just 4. Their defensive line, they have on the season, it's 40 sacks from their defensive line alone. They don't have to send Thomas Davis.
Right.
They don't have to send Luke Kuechly. They don't have to send Bradbury on a corner blitz. It can just be Mario Addison, Julius Peppers, K'Wan Short, Wes Horton, Kyle Love. They're getting back this week Charles Johnson, who hasn't been very productive this year, but he had been suspended, so he'll at least be another fresh body on the D-line. So
he might be fresh, but typically guys, based on my experience, when they come back from a performance enhancement suspension, typically they're not in the same physical shape. They don't have the same type of definition.
Their performance isn't quite as enhanced post-suspension?
Yes.
Okay.
So he is coming back as a body.
Right. It's just another fresh body,
but
that I will say.
For full disclosure.
Okay, that is totally fair. But that D-line, I don't love the Panthers' corners. So you really don't want them to be in man-to-man. Right. If you have to send a bunch of people to get at the quarterback, they're going to be in man-to-man a lot. The fact that they can get at the quarterback with 4 guys, the fact that they have a good rushing attack is why I am bullish on them, and they're in a really weird spot. I can't remember the last time a team went in the last week of the season where they could be the 2, the 3, the 4, or the 5. Like, it's very difficult for them to be the 2 seed. They need a lot of things to happen, most notably Mitch Trubisky to beat the Vikings. So they almost surely won't be the 2 seed, but they could be anywhere 2 through 5 in these playoffs.
UCC mentioned that the Panthers have this comfort level. They weren't in the postseason last year. They were the year before. If you look on the other side at the Falcons, they were in the postseason last year. In fact, they were in the Super Bowl last year. And yet confidence just doesn't seem to be the word that we would ever use with this Atlanta Falcons team. Yes, a win and they're in. They could also get in with a loss, I think. What is it? Seattle has to lose.
Seattle loses, they're in.
Regardless, how much would it mean for the Falcons to win this, at least for their confidence, to win this because they set the tone and they set the stage and they went out and won it?
I mean, they would love an opportunity to get into the playoffs, to try to redeem themselves. They would look at themselves as a dangerous team. barely getting in because they're experienced. They would say they have a chip on their shoulder from last year, but history would say that they're not going to make it. I mean, they are a mediocre offense. This is not nearly the same team. They could get to the playoffs, but they can't score points in bunches that the way they could last year. Their defense is still about middle of the pack now, so their defense is able to get exploited because of lack of productivity, Matty Ice, and this offense. We've talked about it all year. You know, it is not the same since Kyle Shanahan went to San Francisco. So we can't act as if, oh, all of a sudden in week number 17, like they're getting ready to show up and they're getting ready to score 30 points.
Right.
No, we got 15 games of film that says no, they're a mediocre offense, and they can't be special when they're only mediocre from an offensive standpoint.
What helps, I would say, the Falcons' confidence going into this game is, yes, they lost to the Panthers earlier this year, but if you remember, that was a game that changed on a very odd Julio Jones drop. Remember, you diagrammed it for us. It was wide open down the field. The ball, you were talking about how it crossed one of his eyes, and it was, I mean, they had an opportunity to win that football game.
That was a good football game.
Here is, when you look at the numbers, because we now have essentially a full season compared this season to last year, Falcons to Falcons. This was shocking to me when I looked this up. Rushing, last year, 120 yards a game. This year, 119 yards a game. Both years about 4.5 a carry. Last year they had 34 sacks. This year they have 37 sacks. Let me do one of my favorite things, the blind reveal here. Let me show two wide receivers, two stats. Those years, 83 catches to 83 catches, 1,409 yards, 1,364. Average per catch about the same. Show me who those people are, if you would, please. Julio last year and this year. So Julio, with the exception only 3 touchdowns to 6, he's having about the same year. Here's the difference. It's Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan, without Kyle Shanahan, has gone back to being who Matt Ryan has always been prior to last year, a good but not great quarterback. Matt Ryan's going to throw for 1,000 fewer yards. He has the biggest drop-off in passer rating of any quarterback in the league by far. I would have thought, oh, they're not getting Julio the ball enough. Julio has the same number of catches as he did last year, and he's got a game left. The difference is they're not being as effective in throwing to their running backs. They're not being as effective in throwing to their secondary wide receivers. And that, to me, is a schematic thing. That's the difference between the Falcons team that was setting records last year and the Falcons team this year.
To me, the Falcons and Carolina have the same problem. You talked about Matt Ryan. He doesn't have the Carolina defense. So Cam can be inconsistent. You talk about Matty Ryan, Cam can get away with it because his defense has been great. But both of these teams lack big play ability. When Cam was special in 2015, the big play, right? Teddy Ginn and a bunch of people. Last year, Atlanta. Julio's numbers are still the same, but the other players making those big plays aren't there. So both of these teams have that problem as far as how I'm going to generate big plays. And Carolina, the only way they can be special if Cam is consistent and special, which I'm sure we'll dive into later.
Yeah,
just a little bit. And one thing about Matt, you talked about all the different people, the different positions that Matt Ryan was throwing to. He had 7 games last year where he threw 3 touchdowns. This year, none at all.
It's
so he's not been prolific in the least. All right. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.